Hey everybody, Mr. The Fanboy here. It's time for another video, and this time, as you can see by the title above, this is not only another WWE rant, another WWE Sucks video, but this is a remake of my 2015 classic WWE NXT Sucks. This is a remake and an update to that video because NXT is something I still have a problem with, and NXT has changed since the last time I ran it on it. So I'm gonna do an update on why NXT sucks. And as you can already see, I hate, I hate WWE, and I hate watching and even ranting on WWE gets boring. When I think it's gonna be fun, it just gets boring. I didn't even feel like really getting dressed and getting into character. You know how or or um scrounging up some entrance music. I didn't feel like doing anything. I didn't feel like doing any of that. I'm just gonna start the video. I can't get hyped with anything with WWE. Well, with that being said, let's begin. So yeah, like I said, this was going to be an update to my 2015 classic WWE NXT Sucks. And yes, in 2018, while WWE NXT has gotten much better, in 2018, NXT still sucks. Sucks. Now, I'm going to start off with the positives from NXT. The positives is the roster right now is much better now than it was back in 2015 and before. Like I said, I first saw NXT back in the new version of NXT back in late 2012, and apart from Derek Bateman, who is now EC3, and Bram and Bram and any appearance from any past superstar, any current superstar, I thought the entire show was absolute garbage, and I considered it an offense. And this is the biggest reason I hate NXT right here. All of these wrestlers who made their names on the independent circuit, who carved out their own legacy, they have to they have to technically go back to the independent circuit. By going to a developmental territory like NXT, you're going backwards. You're going back to the independent circuit when you went through all the indies to get to the big time, and that was WWE. I consider that an insult and a farce to these wrestlers and their talents, man. They got to go through this crappy developmental system. No, they already learned how to wrestle when they already learned from someone else and from various other promotions and from various veterans how to wrestle, how to work, how to do anything. You didn't teach, you can't teach, and you didn't teach anything. I'm sick of Vince McMahon trying to bury, trying to destroy, or trying to remake and recreate stuff he doesn't create or make. That is the biggest reason I hate NXT. I hate NXT. That is right there the biggest reason I hate NXT. All these wrestlers who should be on the main rosters are in this crappy wannabe indie indie college basement of federation. So the one positive, so that the first positive is the production values. The production values are actually pretty good. They're way better than Ring of Honor. I've spoken positively about Ring of Honor for the past couple of weeks, but there is one problem, and this will always be a problem, especially as long as Sinclair is running things in Ring of Honor, and that is Ring of Honor's terrible production values, storylines in wrestling, and despite having a much weaker roster, the other problem is WWE has raided half of their roster, and some of their top guys are also now in TNA now. But WWE the most has raided their entire roster, and Ring of Honor is just roster wise, it's just a shell of what it once was. Despite that, they still put on decent shows and a decent product. product, and in my opinion, a much better product than WWE. But when it comes to production, WWE can't be beat. The NXT New Orleans and Ring of Honor Supercard of Honor from WrestleMania weekend. Now, I love Supercard of Honor much more. Much more. It was much more entertaining. The storylines of that show were much better than the storylines of New Orleans show. But the New Orleans show, when it came to production, I have to admit, I hate that show. I hate NXT, and I still hate New Orleans, which I'm gonna get to that. There's gonna be another small rant on that. But I hate the New Orleans show. But the New Orleans show, when it came to production and music, they blew Ring of Honor out of the water and made them look Ring of Honor like some lame basement fed. Ring of Honor is a modern day territory, yet they still have an indie feel. An indie feel. Watch this. Ring of Honor is now the number 2 promotion in the world. TNA is in North America, not the world, in North America, and TNA is number 3. Yet TNA still looks and feels like a much bigger promotion than Ring of Honor ever will. It's not until we get to the talent where you see the talent and the facility and the large crowds where you see a Ring of Honor is now bigger than Impact Wrestling. But Impact Wrestling still looks and overall feels much bigger and much better than Ring of Honor. So that's one positive from NXT. Those are 2 positives: the production values and the roster. So yeah, I just got done watching the May 9th edition of NXT, and of course, I tuned into this to see only 2 matches. The opening match between Raul Mendez and EC3, which was pretty good, and of course to see the main event. That was Tommaso Ciampa taking on my man Chris Hero, or Cassius Ohno. Cassius Ohno. Those are one of the reasons I tuned into this show. But this was actually an okay edition of NXT. I usually turn NXT off, usually about several minutes into the show. It's such a lame indie jobber fed. But this edition was actually okay. So those are the positives. Let's get to the negatives. Apart from a couple of popular wrestlers from the independent circuit, it's usually a show full of jobbers and wrestlers nobody cares about, nobody looks up. And then they have a habit of sticking these NXT trash in prestigious and main events, like one of my favorite pay-per-views, the Royal Rumble. They stick this trash who nobody recognizes, like that Ty Dillinger guy. Ty Dillinger guy. Who the hell was that? I'm usually an expert on British wrestling in the independent circuit, and I didn't know who that guy was from a year ago, from last year, the Royal Rumble of last year, having NXT trash in a Royal Rumble. Next is what else? So the roster, apart from the top names, and I find myself skipping lots of it. They also stepped up their wrestling game. I hated when people said stuff like they recently stepped up their game when it comes to wrestling, but I hated in the past when people said stuff like, "Oh, NXT, their wrestling is so much better than Raw and SmackDown," when it's the same damn thing. Except in NXT they get to do more moves. It's this same slow, boring choreographed wrestling, slow-paced choreographed wrestling nobody wants to see, in contrast to the fast-paced action you see in Impact Wrestling, the Lucha Libre promotions, New Japan, the British wrestling, and all of that stuff. It's the same thing. But they recently stepped up match quality, and they have something, not as good, but they have something similar to Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling. New Japan Pro Wrestling. Still not as good. Still not as good. But one problem I had with the matches, I criticized this on the main WWE show, actually on a pay-per-view. That was my Survivor Series 2016 review, and that was the AJ Styles and Rollins Raw vs. SmackDown Survivor Series traditional tag team match. I criticized how that match was almost an hour long, a 5 minute tag team match with no protective gear. These guys somehow managed to fight without injuries or anything in the storyline. Managed to fight for 60 minutes. Come on, I know you're supposed to suspend my belief, but suspend my belief, but please make it look real. No fight without protective gear or rounds would last that long. And in NXT they did that. NXT was actually worse. While the work rate in the matches were good, the ladder match was like 20 something minutes long. The opening ladder match, which was awesome, was 20 something minutes long. Ain't no way a ladder match will last that long. And then other promotions that do have matches that go on that long, TNA with the epic King of the Mountain matches, and even WWE sometimes with their Money in the Bank matches, they have wrestlers who can keep me invested in stuff like that. Usually WWE does this stuff with wrestlers who cannot keep anyone interested or entertained for about 20 something minutes, man. 20 something minutes. 15 to 18 minutes is enough time. That's enough time for the epic entrances, which sometimes the entrances are more important than the match. Then, of course, that leaves the last 15 minutes, to wrestle, which is enough time for a wrestling match. If you go over that, if you do go over that, then the first 5 to 10 minutes better be technical wrestling. Then we get to the brawling and high spots. But no, WWE likes to have these 20-minute fights with nothing but brawling and high spots. Like a fight would last that long. Let's talk about the last two, which were unsanctioned matches, especially the Ciampa versus Gargano fight. The match, the so-called WWE so-called match of the year, was this was a quote-unquote unsanctioned fight. Yet the guys there, they showed up to an unsanctioned fight with their tights, with their short tights. Yeah, not even long tights. No shirts, no pants, no nothing. With their tights and boots, they showed up to an unsanctioned fight where they're gonna get hit with weapons, hit with steel, flesh against steel, flesh against steel. What's his name? They showed to a fight. Then this fight was like 30 something, 36, like 30 something minutes long. An unsanctioned fight. That's even shorter. That's about 10 to 12 minutes, man. 10 to 15 minutes, man. That's how long an unsanctioned fight between two powerful fighters in real life. That's how long an unsanctioned fight would last. That's especially once again without protective gear. TNA did this much better at the Impact Wrestling Redemption show where they had Eddie Edwards, where they had Tommy Dreamer, Eddie Edwards, Moose, OVE, and Sami Callihan. You saw all these guys wearing jeans, long pants, shirts, and everything. That's how an unsanctioned fight looks. That's what you wear when you show up to what is supposed to be booked as a fight. So that's the problem I have with the matches. While the match quality, the work rate has been stepped up, the storylines, the suspension of my disbelief. That's the problems I have with the wrestling matches. Now, the biggest problem, the biggest reason I hate NXT. Of course, on the main roster, that Elias Sampson guy and that No Way Jose guy recently made their debuts. So you're trying to tell me, and by the way, No Way Jose and Elias Sampson, both of those guys are just cartoonish comedy jobbers in my opinion. I don't hate them. I don't like them either. They're just there. They're just there. They're just there. They're just there. But you're trying to tell me these two jobbers, these two cartoonish jobbers, these guys were more ready than Chris Hero and EC3. These guys were more ready than them, and not just them. Adam Cole, Roderick Strong, and Undisputed. Well, one of them is out with an injury, but Undisputed or Red Dragon. Those guys were more ready for the roster than they were. And speaking of, this is another rant. This is 205, 205 live, 205 live. Rockstar Spud. He's in even worse position. He's on a lame cruiserweight show. Who wants to see cruiserweight action? For like an hour. No, you stick them onto one of the main shows and make it a big deal. But you couldn't do that. But it's just Vince McMahon. He ruins everything. Everything he touches, he ruins. Football, he ruins it. Which is why I do not care, and I'm not excited to hear about a new XFL. XFL. Everything he touches. NWO, ruin. WCW, ruin. ECW, ruin. The Nexus, ruin. Summer of Punk, ruin. Anything Vince McMahon touches and puts his hands on, or WWE, they find a way to ruin it. They recently ruined cruiserweights. I was initially excited for the idea for another cruiserweight division, but it's just vanilla midgets and indie flippity flop garbage, and I do not want to see that for an hour. There are a couple of wrestlers I like there, but I do not care to see them in this format. And why is Rockstar Spud general manager here instead of being on Raw? I immediately want Rockstar Spud to come onto the main roster and immediately start wrestling the top guys like he did in TNA. I'm already missing him in Impact Wrestling. Same with EC3. Like I said, No Way Jose and Elias Sampson, these two comedy jobbers, were more ready for the roster than these wrestlers who spent years making their name on the independent circuit and in TNA way before they got to WWE. Cassius Ohno is even worse because he's like 38, 39 years old. He'll be 40 years old soon. And he's still not on the main roster yet. Well, that was my WWE rant. That was my short WWE rant and my remake of my 2015 WWE NXT rant. Alright, I'm done. I'll catch you guys later.